Hi everybody, my name's Lee. I'm one of the organizers. Full disclosure, I take no responsibility for what they say, and I have no skin in the game as I don't work in IT security. So I'm going to have the panelists go that way and introduce themselves. You guys got 30, 60 seconds. You go too long, I swear to God, let's do it.
Mark Knowlton, I am the senior technical recruiter at Akamai. Been in the space about 18 years, and I focus primarily on software engineering, but security obviously is a part of that. And my specialty is actually doing fairly granular technical interviews. So when I come around a conversation with any folks here, I actually can follow along. So I'm not just sitting and nodding my head like a mute. So.
Hi, I'm Roy Wattanasin. I'm the organizer of Security BSides Boston. I also lead the information security program for a healthcare and educational organization. And I also on many boards, and also at the same time teach part-time healthcare information security. Used to be at Brandeis, and now pending at another college location.
Hi, I'm Ming, Chow, and I'm an instructor at Tufts University.
Paul Asadoorian, Technical Network Security, Security Weekly.
What? Faster. I can't do that. I can't do faster. My name is Rob Cheyne. I am the CEO of Big Brain Security. We do security strategy solutions. I've been a builder and a breaker, and for the last 10 years I've done an awful lot of security training, so I think that's how I ended up sitting up here. And I think that's good enough. I also run Source Boston. Come to Source Boston.
All right, here's your first question, panelists. Studies show that people with a BA make, at a minimum, $700K more over their career than people without a BA. A BA at MIT costs less than half that. Doesn't it make sense to go to college to get a degree?
Is that why you go to college? I thought it was for drinking and partying.
Well, to take a step that, so one side of the argument is that we say for a computer science background, if you want to be a developer, there are certain basic fundamentals you're going to learn for operating system, databases, data structure, all that stuff. So there are a lot of companies that won't look at somebody who doesn't have that degree. But having said that, there's no substitute for real life experience. So let's say there's a person who, for whatever reason, didn't get a degree, the surrogate for that would be real practical experience. And if somebody wants to just like suck it up, be an intern, not get paid, but learn on the job. And plus, there's so much available content. I mean, with EDX, I mean, all of MIT's curriculum's online. I think Harvard and one other school. So there's ways you can acquire the same knowledge without having to necessarily go and get that degree at the brick institution.
I mean, let's be honest, a lot of jobs are going to require that you have a degree, and so you're going to need that if you want the job. Just be mindful of how much you spend on it, There are degrees in varying costs, so, yeah, you're going to get that money back, like Lee said, if you get a job and you have a degree at MIT, that's great, but, I don't want to give someone, half my salary just because I want that money for me and my family, so, what I tell a lot of the people that intern with me and that work for me is getting your degree is great, but you don't have to go get the highest level degree depending on what you want to do. If you want to be a developer. I always tell them the story that one of the developers that I know really well, one of the brightest wireless engineers probably that I've ever known in my entire life, and I've talked to a lot of them, he never went to college and had a really good paying job for a long time. I think he did go back and get his degree later on, but never had a degree. It's certainly one of the brightest engineers I've ever met in my life, so it's not a requirement. Yeah. I don't mean no.
And really just to say, right, education is always good, but I think it really depends on, right, your motivation to learn new things. So, right, it's all about having your own lab, doing your own things, really researching and really being motivated in what you want to do. So I would say in both worlds, education is good, but also experience comes a long way, right? We've seen many people with different certifications, but has no idea what the whole TCP/IP stack is, or knows how to do or use Wireshark, for example. So it depends, but I would say that if you have the motivation, you are always motivated to learn new things. So it doesn't matter what certifications and what other education you have. I think both education and both the certifications help, but being motivated to learn always will play an important role.
Yeah, I think having the 4-year degree shows that you had the focus to sit through 4 years of something, anything. Doesn't matter what the 4 years worth of things were necessarily. I know lots of people that are doing things now that have nothing to do with the degree that they were in. So I don't think what you have the degree in matters so much as, having done something for that period of time. Now, do you absolutely need that? Absolutely not. There's lots of examples in the world of people that have bypassed that entire requirement. It's kind of like, I will never get a CISSP, kind of a thing. Some people just, I remember sitting, I was in a taxi line out in Vegas at DEF CON one year, and there was a kid who's about 17 years old talking about college, and he was going to one of the conferences, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna drop out of school, or I'm like, dude, don't do that. And he's like, but Bill Gates did it. I'm like, yeah, but you're basically, unless you know for sure you're going to be on that path, you're increasing the odds that you're going to have a lot of more adversity in your path. So.
And not to forget that some people really have, like Bill, hit the lottery, or the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. Now, I actually, the cost of college is a serious irk point for me because, I'm in this business, but, one thing, I think the two things that college offers, something, Mark certainly mentioned, is the fundamentals. If you want a good metaphor, is a lot of people, when they watch professional basketball, they say there's actually a huge difference between the players who actually played a year or two in college and those who just went from high school to college. Because the people who went, a lot of the players who just went from high school to college, they can say, ooh, there's something missing in his game that could have been, improved if he played a year or two in college. So it offers some fundamentals, but the other thing, certainly what college will, and which a lot of students don't realize and don't take advantage of, is something called connections.
That's a good segue. So the majority of people in the IT field don't actually have a degree in computer science. If it wasn't required to get into the field, why should someone spend $100K to get that degree?
If you're going to spend the money to get the degree in computer science, you better really like computer science, because otherwise you're just enduring 4 years of pain. You don't need that particular degree, so you better actually enjoy it. That's my 2 cents. Life's too short to do anything for 4 years that sucks for you.
Anybody else?
Well, when I'm looking at candidates for a particular position, when I read a resume, I'm looking at the things that they've actually accomplished. What deliverables have you produced? And none of that's derivative of having gone to a certain college. In fact, I've consulted some places where they had this mindset where they only wanted degrees from certain colleges, and I thought that was the worst kind of myopia. Because that dismisses anyone who has the ability to just be a real creative, think of the beat problem solver, which can't be measured by a piece of paper, right? So I've always stressed that there's no substitute for someone who actually can show you a delivered product, a tangible artifact that was a result of their hard work, research, and effort, and creativity. So as good as a college education might be, I think actual accomplishment in the world is something that can't be taken away or dismissed. And so I will always be an advocate of somebody who can apply themselves, learn what they need to learn, but make that a constant process, right? I didn't become, the propeller-headed geek that I am from a recruiting perspective by just reading a white paper. It started in the late 90s and it's evolved over time, but I've incrementally increased my knowledge base over time. And there's nothing in my resume that suggests I could talk about generational garbage collection, right? But it's something that I've acquired over time. And so learning and knowledge is just something that's a journey. It's not something that's an event tied to a piece of paper.
So out of curiosity, for your panelists, what do you guys major in?
Journalism. I was a sports writer and editor for the first half of my career.
IT networking.
I was actually computer science. In high school, I said, I want to do computer science. College, I did computer science. I never regretted.
computer information security. It was more like a degree in business, which I think I used pretty much. Probably more than the computer information part as I interned throughout college. So.
I did computer information systems, but I actually wanted to. It wasn't because I, knew I was going to get some great paying job afterwards. It was because I actually was into it, and it was like yours. It was mostly a business degree. I had a technical job doing development stuff that I was really into, but I did the business side.
Well, you guys are just proving out. So for the record, I was an economics major, so that really had nothing to do with IT. So if someone insists on going to college because they want to break into IT sec, what should they study? What should they major in? Is a 2-year degree good enough?
It's an interesting question. Actually, someone that works for me now is completing her associate's degree, and she said, a lot of people want that 4-year degree, and I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll get some certifications to supplement. So, again, I think there's going to be a certain amount of jobs that they're just going to require a 4-year degree. If that's not the jobs you're going after, then an associate's degree is nothing wrong with that. And now she's interning with us or working for us and learning security, and we're also going to help her get some certifications as well. So there's nothing wrong with that path either.
Not only there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, at Tufts, there's so many people now that were like poli-sci, economics, IR majors, international relation majors that are doing a post-bac in computer science because, not only have they started to enjoy it a lot, but they know that there will be something at the end of the tunnel. But I have to say, if you're asking if someone's trying to break into security now, like what would it take? I can tell you right now, that man right there, Rob, epitomizes exactly what is necessary in this field. I mean, it's passion. That is the number one thing I look for in anyone. And you mentioned 2 things, Rob. When you introduced yourself, that nailed like what is so necessary in this field. You're a builder and you're a breaker. Okay? And really, that epitomizes passion.
Exactly. I agree with all of you guys, and then, and gals as well. But passion is the one thing that I think from my opinion, I've seen some of the best security people are they majored in different other subjects, right? Chemistry, biology. They make some of the world's greatest security professionals. So.
Yeah, one of our new rock star InfoSec people was an anthropologist.
I want to kind of add on to that line of, so we recently just hired at Security Week, we hired someone named Ashley, and she had 2 things really I was looking for. Great organizational skills with a background in that. She was actually in the Navy, which, we talk about college, but certainly military service ranks really high with me as well. And then she had the passion piece of it. We actually had no open positions. We created a position for her, and it's working out really well. So
let's say someone has a BA, I'll just start with that assumption, or something equivalent, and they've been doing something other than IT security, and they're mid-career. How do they break into this field?
Don't start by getting the list of letters after your name. Just for the record, like when I interview people, the more letters you have, the less likely it is that I'm going to actually call you back. A couple's okay, but what does it tell about you? It tells that you know how to take a test, right? So what's actually more interesting is go take on an open source project, or something where the tangible manifest, like you were saying before, Mark, where you actually show that you did something. Go help run a conference, volunteer somewhere at like a BSides or a source or something where you're doing something in the community. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can get involved and show that you're interested and passionate about about being in the field, without just going and getting the certifications. One or two is probably fine just to kind of get your feet wet, but don't fall into the mistake of having 15 letters after your name. I don't see any value in that.
Yeah, I think there's a really high value put on certifications, and I tend to agree with Rob, although I will disagree with you slightly. There are some certifications that require you to do a lot of real world work, right? But, what I always encourage people to do is write a blog. That's what I give a presentation on this topic on how to get into the field. One of the recommendations is to write a blog. That's one of the first things we looked at. I am not so involved with the hiring process at Tenable now, but I was a few years ago. This is the first thing we look at for every technical hire is, did you have a blog and what did you write about? How are your writing skills? How are your communication skills? How's your technical skills? It tells me all those things if I can go read your blog. So, and that's something that anyone can create, anyone can take on a project. I give it to the people who are interning and working with us at Security Weekly. I say, go to the packet storm security, go to the tools feed, pick a random tool, go learn how it works, write it up, and do a tech segment on the show. And you know, once you can start doing that, I mean, that's a great experience.
I think, you know, to certainly add on to Paul, if you take a look at the important point is, do you have something to show for it? Okay, the certification, I mean, that's going to be a question later on, but do you have something to show for, you know, in terms of your passion and your tangible skill? Yeah, blog is good. Certainly having a project on GitHub. We have a friend who actually wrote a tool, a NoSQL map, and being used quite a bit. That stuff tells a big story about you, why you want to do that, like why you want to be in security. It tells, you know, that you're a builder, you're a breaker. But I think it goes back to something else I've said. Also, in terms of breaking into the field, your connections really matter. Yes, I did study computer science at Tufts, but just to let you know, the only ounce of security I actually got was in a pro course, and I took crypto. Everything that was like web security, exploitation, all that stuff, I would like to say that I learned on my own, but I also have to give a lot of credit to Gary McGraw. A friend of mine. I took a course on software security with him, and that actually started it all for me.
And really, just to say, right, it's not only security people dealing with security, so it's all of our technologists, technology IT people as well, right? We need more, everyone's involvement with security. We all know security is part of the whole process. Small companies, right, you have multiple people, multiple hats doing different things. So I also agree with the blogs, working on open source projects, finding vulnerabilities, contributing to CVE, for example, volunteering at different conferences, networking, having like a solid foundation. And then after that, you can kind of specialize and do what you want to do, but contributing to the community overall.
Well, to expound on the original question, because obviously this audience isn't a bunch of brand new, grads, but this is applied to, if you want to apply to a position that doesn't appear to be, like your resume doesn't look like it was used to write the job description. A lot of times people are a little bit passive, they just send the resume to jobs ad. Whereas if you go on LinkedIn, find a job that looks interesting, what LinkedIn actually does, it's on the right panel, it's going to show you a bunch of people to whom you are connected that has a connection to someone at that company. Most companies have employee referral programs. Get an introduction to that person is going to be an advocate for you. So, because how many times have you ever said, if I could just talk to the hiring manager, I know that they would see the glint of my eye and that I have a passion for it. Okay, your resume is a static document. I would encourage anyone who's considering taking a shot at the job where your resume doesn't look like it was used to write the job description. Use networking, because once you engage with the person and they can provide you the introduction, that's always the best way to go.
Since we're talking about networking, let's throw something out there. I've heard it said a number of times that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And the data point there is most people, for most people, you make within $10,000 of your 5 closest peers. And not just about money, but in the field, if you want to be a speaker, if you want to be a leader, hang out with the other speakers and leaders. Don't just hang out with the people that aren't, they're kind of hanging out in the corner picking the locks all the time and doing nothing but that. Nothing against that. But don't spend your entire time at the conference playing the CTF or doing the lock picking and not networking. That's my point. I love all that stuff.
Wow.
Are you saying, like my grandfather always said, like if you want to fly like an eagle, don't hang with the chickens?
I mean, what Rob is saying, right? Be able to present in front of different audiences, right? I think don't always be the person behind the computer looking at the screen. It's great as well, but be able to talk and communicate with at different levels. Doesn't matter what kind of people you talk to, especially going outside, not only of this country, but being able to talk at different locations as well.
It is an interesting point, right? It's in the getting out from behind the computer, but also using social media, which I think is really important. Even when you're just breaking into the field, get a Twitter account, follow the people in the field, maybe some of them will follow you back, get involved in the discussions, and that can be a great way to, there are all kinds of tweet ups, or it's just a great way to stay involved with the community. And it sounds weird, because I think when a lot of us used Twitter for the first time, like I did, I was like, what was that? And then like 4 months later, I'm like, for some reason I gotta try this again, and then I just haven't stopped using it since. So.
We've embraced Twitter. The security community's embraced Twitter like no other community I've seen. So yeah, if you want to be a leader in security and you don't have a Twitter account, you're doing something wrong probably, unless you're Bruce Schneider, he doesn't have one.
I think he does now.
All right, so moving on. You guys have talked about some of the networking stuff. So if someone's interested in interning or volunteering, which I think, probably some people out there are, how do they go about finding a place to do that?
You can tweet me. We usually have internships available if anyone's interested at Science Security Weekly. Is that a shameless plug? You said there were no rules.
There are no rules.
We actually do have a running internship program, and we're not the only one either. So, the other thing, a lot of people mentioned open source projects. If you're not the most experienced coder, or even if you know nothing about programming, you can still get involved with an open source project, right? You can help test the code, you can help run their social media, manage their GitHub, write documentation, and that's a great way to kind of fall into an internship as well. So don't think you have to be like the super awesome programmer to be involved in an open source project. There's lots of other roles.
Let me throw one additional question out. Does it matter where? How do you know that you're getting quote unquote the right experience, or does that matter if you're just getting experience? Because you guys are saying, yeah, just go do open source. So is that good enough?
So I usually tell people to kind of project out 5 years in the future if you can, and figure out what you want to be doing, and look at your resume today and see where the gaps are, and then take jobs that do those things, that fill those gaps for at least, do it for each one for at least a year or two, just to kind of fill in a gap. And you can completely social engineer your own resume to basically put you legitimately in a position of whatever you want to go in within a relatively short period of time. One thing that helps is working at a startup, because in a startup you tend to have the opportunity to do a little bit of everything. And I often tell people you can get 15 years worth of experience in 3 to 5 at a startup if you go to the right startup. And if you're going down the path and you find that it just sucks at that place, find another one. Don't be too committed to one thing and feel like you have to stay somewhere that's not fun. So kind of keep that balancing point.
Exactly, like Rob was saying, right? Like I always say as well, do a pen test on yourself, right? We do pen tests on other companies, but let's do a pen test on the gap of us as well, right? You want to do a pen test on yourself. And additionally, you also want to find a good mentor. A good mentor like Paul Asadoorian, or actually Rob or Ming, or actually anyone, right? But make sure that you want to learn. The main thing is you have passion to learn, and but again, do a pen test on yourself. And see.
Is the InfoSec Mentors project, that's still running, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's another great place for mentors as well.
Can we get a shout out from the audience?
One of the best bits of advice I got from a mentor recently is that a single mentor really isn't enough. You need to get yourself a chairman of the board. That person's your chairman, then figure out who the rest of your board of directors are. Find the person who's best on security, but a person who's best on business. A person who can help you with life balance as well. So you get advice not just from one single perspective, but a whole array of folks.
Yeah, my wife is really into public speaking, and in 2009 she was second in the world in the Toastmasters Championship contest. And she did that in 4 years from scratch. And she did it by doing exactly what you said. By the time she got to that level, all of her mentors were the previous world champions, and that wasn't an accident.
I'll get another shout out from the audience. Mostly just enjoy watching people run.
Actually, what you said, Rob, actually strikes a tone with me right now. As I'm going from an area of being very comfortable job-wise to an area in a development aspect as a security analyst, as a lead analyst in my next job in a week. And I did it because I found the gap in my career that certifications, mentorship, previous experience wasn't filling for me. And it's kind of taking a piece of humble pie and saying, I know what I've done, but I know I've got so much more to do. Just knuckle down, do this, fill in that part of your gap in your resume or your gap in your skills experience, and that'll set me up to where I want to be in 3 to 5 years. So that really, really rings a tone, and I think everybody in InfoSec, we kind of have to stay hungry and stay humble and just continue to keep driving and driving ourselves to what we really feel passionate about. That's one of the things that multiple mentors have explained to me on where I'm at in the maturity process, and I've just taken it to heart.
I think there's something else. I mean, you ripped the word "stay humble, stay hungry" out of my mouth, because, by the way, that's also the motto of the New England Patriots. But also, I think, what was I going to say? I think one thing I wish I did a lot more of in the past, and I think we're going to address this later on, is taking risk and doing something that is out of your comfort zone is not a good thing. It is a phenomenal thing. It is how you learn.
It's how you grow as well. If you're always only living within your comfort zone stays small. And as soon as you step outside of it, well, now it's scary. But then the more you step outside of it, the bigger your comfort zone becomes, and you grow. That's how trees grow. That's how everything grows.
That's exactly right. I mean, I started life as a sports writer when I was being paid as a sports writer before I was old enough to drive the car, and I was 15 years old. And then I wanted to change careers when I was 30, and within a couple of years, I actually started a company. I figured out a way to put corporate data on a mobile device with the highest degree of security and the lowest cost of ownership in existence. And I never could have foreseen doing something that crazy back when I was on the copy desk, But I had confidence and was willing to bet on myself, and I wouldn't be where I am today had I not taken that bold move and dove out of the plane. I know that parachute's cracked.
So we've talked about degrees, we've talked about technical stuff. What might be some of the soft skills you look for when hiring someone? Because that's kind of critical.
Well, one of the things I look for when I conduct a technical interview, it's not enough to see that someone can regurgitate the fence posts of a correct answer, right? It's all about how effectively do they communicate. So when I ask kind of an open-ended question, I'm listening to their answer, but I'm also trying to picture them in the stand-up, and how effectively are they going to be able to communicate their idea? And I'm thinking like, okay, if in 7 seconds the rest of the room's going to be rolling their eyes, like this guy's just not going to fit. So soft skills like that, the ability to express yourself effectively in writing, as well as presenting interpersonally, those are absolutely critical.
I look for primarily two things, and not necessarily as a qualification for hiring, but we take on interns. Really, what I look for is how they solve the problem. It's not whether or not you get the right answer or not. It's how you approach the problem in your process to problem solving. If you've got a good approach to that, which is kind of a tough thing to teach, right? Then you're going to do really well. The other thing is communication skills. Can you take what you've just learned and communicate that to others? And that's a lot of what we do with it. Why you see interns in our technical segments is we're giving them a problem, seeing how they do with it, and then making them communicate that.
And well, really just to say, right, I think everyone mentioned, but thinking critically, thinking outside the box. So if there's one option, right, there's always going to be different options. But if you can resolve it like going this way instead of just different options, always thinking outside the box in anything that you do. Having passion for things that you currently do, but also exploring all of the risks that you have, right, because you're doing something new. That's what I would say. And also communication skills as well.
I tend to look for, can I put this person in front of a customer? Would I be comfortable sending this person to Goldman Sachs? Right? And that's not true for everybody. And it depends on, not for every role that matters, but for the roles that I kind of hire for, I tend to want people that are customer facing. So I want people that can think technically and can approach technical problems, but at the same time, I don't have to tell them that they need to actually, dress appropriately and that kind of stuff. And so presenting themselves professionally, but also being able to communicate clearly and effectively and not just diving straight down to the weeds for 10 minutes without any kind of context or anything like that. That's kind of important.
Remember, those,
And the things they say.
those interpersonal skills will get you the promotion.
Yep.
Can we get a shout out to the audience, please?
So I think communication is really important, but there's sort of an undercurrent that I'm hearing here of communication as a form of talking. But equally, if not more important, is the aspect of communication that involves listening. And that's not a soft skill, that's a hard skill.
Yeah, I think listening is, you're right. I think it's one of the hardest things we do as a human being. And it's amazing when if you ever want to just play this game at a conference, because you have a lot of people that you have access to, walk around and just strike up a conversation with somebody and see how long it is before they actually ask you anything about you. Chances are you'll just hear blah, 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 blah. Like, and it's always interesting when you meet somebody that stops and just asks you about you. And you're like, oh, wow, I'm suddenly the center of the universe. And that's how you feel when you get that. So that's one of those skills that you can practice and develop, and it's easily practicable.
So switching gears, if you could do it all over again, from the very beginning. So I'm a little scared about where you guys are going with this. What would you change?
If I had to do this all over again, what would I do? A few months ago, Melissa Elliott from Veracode, I don't know if some people may know her, at 0x A Bad Idea, posted this tweet which hit me like a truck. And she wrote, because I think about this all the time, and she said, if I had to do this all over again, if I was a kid in the 90s, I should have, it was along the lines of, if I was a kid in the 90s, I should have started or joined a hacker group that had a 0 in it. But what did that say? But what does that mean? You know, I think if you take a look at, I think the thing that I really miss, I really should have done was, I should have committed more time and more passion to what I really enjoyed, which was, programming and tinkering on the Mac. I mean, back in the days, I did pretty good. I would say I did pretty good personally with, the computer sciences, the AT courses. I really thoroughly enjoyed programming on my Mac. But I think the one thing that I should have gone a lot further, I think the fear was there was a lot of stigma. The stigma is, the people who actually stay at the computer too much, they'll never go anywhere. You're just like a loser. And that was something I didn't want to be. I think there was the peer pressure of kind of held me back a little bit. I even had by the way, is this this videotape by any chance?
Not at all, not at all.
Good old high school friend of mine said, oh, Ming knows everything about the computer. Like he's like the most passionate guy in computers. But at the same time, he would also rag on me as, hey, did you do any of the other work? Like you gotta get out. You gotta get out, man. So if I had to wish I did this all over again, I wish I actually went even further. Like created like an underground bulletin board or something. And I wish I actually took my skills a lot further when I was a lot younger, when I was in high school.
If I could go back and change things, I would definitely go back to that time at BrewCon when I drank way too much Jewel. Definitely change that. I would also go back in time to that time when I worked for the university and my director at the time had brought in this guy and some of his friends who created this really cool firewall company, and it did deep packet inspection, and they were first getting onto the market. They wanted to see what we thought of it. I wish I had broke out my checkbook at that point in time and wrote them a really big check because they're Palo Alto today. Other than that, I've made a lot of mistakes and done some good things. I wouldn't change any of that. I mean, because your mistakes, that's really what you learn from. So,
for me, it would have been when I started that company organically. I was chasing the VC money. I was trying to raise like $5 million back in the Post.com bust. And it was just, and there was nothing in my background that could have suggested I should have been able to think of the solution, but what I should have done was to figure out any way possible to get the damn thing built first and start getting customers, like anything to just get the damn thing built. And I wound up, you know, it came too late trying to partner with a carrier, but if I had done that from day one and just like, okay, let's build this thing, we'll license it exclusively, but just to have an actual working product instead of, I just bought into the notion that doing the conventional way, going to BC, raising money and all that stuff, and I should have been more focused on just getting the damn thing built and not worry about all that BC noise.
I'm happy where I am. No. I would say that, you know, everyone learns from mistakes, right? You have to make mistakes in order to learn from them, right? There's so many risks, right? I still think that, right, you should do a pen test on yourself, because who's basically out there, you should do like a pen test, well, doing like a social exercise, looking at all the jobs and what those jobs require, right? There's different skill levels and things like that. But I would say that if I were to change one thing, I would probably be a part of more different groups, bulletin board groups. I used to have some bulletin boards that I had a long time ago. Anyway, and yeah, basically be a part of that and be a part of groups, because they can stick up for you. So if you make mistakes, you learn from them, right? You don't have to be an expert or anything like that, right? I would say that, you know, there's the people that say they're experts, it depends, right? But everyone's always learning, right? And also, if I were to have any change, I would probably major in more computer engineering, because I like hardware hacking as well.
I think at any given time, any given point in time, you are the sum of all the experiences you've had to date. So anytime anybody's ever asked me this question, my real answer is I probably wouldn't change a damn thing, because it got me to where I am right now. But just as the hypothetical game, I think I would have starting companies earlier, because that is the path to freedom as closely as I can determine.
Okay, I got one last question for you guys. In the popular game of Ask Rabid Rabid, would you choose to go first or second?
Paul.
I choose to go first. How's that? Because that person gets to do all the grabbing. And since it's my fictitious game, I can make up the rules.
Does everybody in the audience know why you got asked that?
Has anyone heard of Ask Rabid Rabid game before, other than on the show? No, that's because it's completely fictitious.
And he loves to ask people this question, so I wanted to hear his
It
answer.
actually came, if you want to know the history behind it, it came from a TV show. Does anyone recognize the TV show Bully Beatdown? Anyone? Yeah, like one person, right? It was this game where they find this person being picked on and the bully, and they would take the bully and they'd put him in the ring with a UFC fighter, right? Wow. And if the bully lost, he had to pay the person he was picking on like money, like $10,000 to $5,000. And if he won, he didn't have to pay anything. So he got $5,000. Yeah. There was no bullies that really made it. I think one did and needed like immediate medical attention, was left in a rescue. But the host of the show used to sit down with the bully and he'd be like asking him questions like, if you write a book about yourself, what would the title be? You don't have to answer that, Rob, because I got that deer in the headlights look. But one of the questions he asked him was the Ask Rabid Rabid question, and we stole it from him. And then the host got arrested and they canceled the show. That's the story of Ask Rabid Rabid. People like, I Google searched for that, I couldn't find it anywhere.
So that's where you got the book question too.
Yeah, and then we got the book question from there too. Yeah. And I tell everyone that the Ask Rabid Rabid is popular in Europe. I'm like, oh, that's why I hadn't heard of it. Social engineering, that's fine.
All right, do we have any other questions from the audience? Because we
Show of
got
hands,
some
who would
time.
go first? Who would go first?
Oh yeah, that's what it is.
Second? Who would go second? Second, you like to be grabbed. We know. Yeah, that's my other favorite show now is Tosh.0, so if you know my juvenile level of...
This just adds to my evidence that Paul is the Howard Stern of the security world.
When we have oil wrestling in the studio, I'll invite you, Rob.
Questions? Questions?
Questions?
Yeah. So the question is, I'm a grad student, so everything you've spoken here meant a lot for me. So all of you have mentioned that you don't care about the letters, behind your names, no certifications, no degrees. Yeah, degrees you mentioned. I'm doing my masters. So, but before all of you belong to technical background. You will be the technical recruiter, but my resume will first reach out to the HR system or the filtering system, the software. So in case if my resume doesn't have a good certification or say experience of n number of years, it will not pass through the HR system, it will not reach out to you.
Wait, did you hear his answer earlier?
You're making a fundamental assumption here. You're assuming you have to go through that system in the first place.
Exactly.
I haven't got a job, no offense, Mark, I haven't got a job through a recruiter in at least 15 years, and it's not because I haven't been working. Right? So go meet people here. The security leaders are all here. If you want to get into the industry, they're all at the conferences. Go to the conferences, hang out with them, find the people that are speaking. They're probably leaders in their field. Awesome. Talk to them, tell them about what you do. Find someone that resonates with you. If you don't want to do security, you want to do something else, there's other conferences. There's conferences for everything. And that is the way to do it. You don't have to go through the recruiters. If you want to go that path, it's fine. But if you're trying to bypass it, learn some social engineering tricks, and you can totally bypass any of those requirements you need to. Just saying.
Yeah, for example, if you want a job at Tenable, you can come find me and tell me about your skill set and what you want to do in your passion. And if we talk, we have a good conversation, I think you're a good fit, we're going to bypass HR. And I'm like, you just need to talk to Ron or Bruno, and you're in from that point. And that's all just about networking, like Rob said. And I've done that. There are people who work for Tenable today because they talk to myself or Jack or someone else at a conference.
Can you pass it down to the recruiter, please? Can you pass this to the recruiter to answer that question? Thank you.
Okay, so, one thing I want to address, there are a lot of fallacies or misconceptions, and I got from your question to put into the HR system if I don't have enough experience. So number one, there's no kind of automation that companies use in any kind of ATS where it's going to flag your resume based on certain BQs, what we call basic qualifications. So you're not going to get knocked out by some type of automation, all right? The problem is in most positions that you do send into jobs at, right, the recruiter is going to be trying to find the resume that looks like a job description. And unfortunately, most of the time the recruiters don't understand neither the requirement nor things that you do on your resume, right? They're just trying to line up buzzwords. And so that's why I emphasized, if you truly want to target a position, network your way in there, get an introduction, via LinkedIn, because a warm introduction is going to be so much more impactful than you hoping you get discovered. Now, if you have the resume that lines up perfectly with the job description, great. But most of the time, that's simply not going to happen. But you have a belief you can do that kind of work. Maybe you've done projects on the side that don't reflect, that maybe you didn't add to your resume because you didn't think that was appropriate, but you're going to be able to do the job because you can get an introduction. If you can talk with a manager because you got an introduction, do that all the time. And sending your resume in, you're just a victim of all the other numbers in there, and then it's just kind of random. It's not a strategy. Yep.
I mean, you talk about being meshed in, I mean, right now you go to places like the Monster.coms of the world, it's an abyss. You get 800 people applying for one job, and half of the candidates are all they're using generic resumes. A wise man in Las Vegas one time told me, and this is where the value of places like DEF CON and, a wise man in Las Vegas once told me that your connection will give you more, not job, opportunities, all right, than you can ever imagine. By the way, the reason why I have my phone out right now is there is also a lot of positions that are not advertised. Right now, I have a friend of mine who's on he sent me a Twitter message. He said, Ming, hey Ming, know of any Java developers out of your program at Tufts looking for work at a very cool, Red Star startup? A lot of jobs are not even advertised. They're just under the table, and you know, it certainly with a trust factor. You know, would you rather trust someone off the street? You know, like LinkedIn, like the not LinkedIn, but like Monster.com, or would you trust someone that you know you already know?
As an employer, I can tell you that I hate having to go to a recruiter to find people. I hate having to post job advertisements. I feel like if I've gotten to that level, on some level, my network has failed me, because it's so much better to find people that I know or that can vouch for somebody because I know that they're going to be good. Because it's really expensive to get rid of somebody after you've hired them. So I'd much rather find someone that's right in the first place, it's a good fit, and do my best to do that through my network.
Yeah, I mean, those interpersonal relationships are so important. Even a field like ours, you know, I also produce a cigar podcast, and you want to talk about an industry that is built upon personal relationships. They're not going to give you the time of day if they haven't met you, sat down, had a cigar with you for like 2 hours, and that's just how they work. But, I mean, it's a great model, right? And, you know, like Rob was saying, you come to a conference here, you sit down, you talk with people, and then later on, if you're looking for a job, or that's the person I sat down with at that conference one time. It's extremely important to have, you know, someone said earlier, that warm introduction goes a long way. And it's not just with jobs either, right? We bring guests on the show, we go out and we look for sponsors. If 9 times out of 10, if we don't have that warm introduction, there's some kind of background or history, we haven't spoken with them, that relationship is not going to be as fruitful as you would have hoped. Whereas if I know someone that works at a sponsor, I have a relationship with them, then that's a totally different story. So it's not just about your career either, right? It's how you do business. You can attest as you create companies, right? It's about relationships.
Rob, you talked about talking to business, talking to customers, and do you see value in certifications, advanced degrees, when you're talking to business that's not security related, or talking to customers, you know, who don't know you and they're just trying to get a feel for whether they can trust you?
So you mean just to get your foot in the door, having the certificates?
No, your foot is in the door.
Now, do you guys think that you're going to listen to somebody just because they have letters on their name? I don't know. Like, I think that's more of it's more interpersonal skills at that point. Once your foot's in the door and you actually have the ability to call somebody up and say, hey, I know you, then you call up and, you know, so play the long game on this, guys. Like, it's not always about, I'm going to conduct a transaction with you right now. It's about, hey, let me get to know you, and then maybe at some point in the future we'll have something that's mutually beneficial. I look at selling as not a bad thing, because I don't look at it like I'm trying to get something from you. I look at it as, I have something of value to offer you, and if you want it, cool, and if you don't, maybe later. And then, or I'll tell somebody else. Yeah, I'll help you if I can. But I look at it as more of a relationship thing, and in the long run that tends to work out better. It may not give you the short-term results you want now, but in the long term it always does.
And just to say, really, right, talk to people and don't make any assumptions, right? It's about those long-term relationships, so just want to say it.
So you had kind of 2 different conversations. One was about filling in those gaps in your resume. How do you do that? You said go be on open source projects, volunteer, do all this stuff. And then you talked about this and how you need to network with people. I just want to point out that the first gets you the second. You don't have to go out and be like, my whole goal today is to just meet people. If you go and you volunteer for projects, if you do things, you will make those connections, which will get you the things later on. Look for opportunities to speak, even if it's at a small group. I got the job I have now because I gave a talk at the end of a course in grad school, and a fellow student saw me and submitted my resume. So I mean, the more you can get out there, the more people you can come in contact with, the better it'll be.
That's just a good rule of living a balanced life. If you're trying to, let's say, get more exercise and get more social activities and get more, if you can do those things all in one activity, that's great. So anytime you can combine them, that's even easier.
We like to drink beer and talk about security, so we created this thing called a podcast.
Actually, there's one thing I also want to we're looking for beers too, but also I gotta warn everyone, and I gotta warn everyone. This is, but the key is, you don't want to piss anyone off or just be a jerk, because you don't realize, although the field seems really, really big, I mean, it's like thousands, millions of data, it is tiny.
We all know each other.
Everyone knows each other. Everyone knows each other. So, I mean, you know, you don't want to do anything stupid.
So if you're getting into the field and you're a security researcher, I'll just say, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Right? Like, be nice to each other. You don't, like, yeah, you're smart, but you don't have to, you know, I'm going to withhold my information from you because I can. You know, come on, just be cool with everybody. Like, we all talk to each other. We all laugh at you at the bar anyway, so. Anybody that doesn't follow that golden rule ends up, you know, getting in some way ostracized, whether they realize it or not.
This is going to be the last. Such pressure. Have you had an expectation that what's going to happen that's just been spectacularly wrong? For example, I thought C would go the way of Cobalt, and after the Mars worm, I thought security was actually a solvable problem. Do you have any spectacular crap? Was I wrong about that?
I do, yeah. So in 2004, I created my first consulting company, and I thought that traditional methods of marketing would work in the computer security industry. It kind of ties into our previous conversation. And they failed miserably. Like, no one wants to look at a flyer and say, oh yeah, I'll hire you for a pen test, right? So I went to my friends in the industry. One of them was Ed Scotus, and I'm like, Ed, so what am I doing wrong? Ed actually had a so-called competing company, right? And he helped me anyway, and I never forgot that. So that goes back to, you know, Rob's like, be nice to people. And so you're just gonna get out there in the community and do stuff. I'm like, cool, I'll create a podcast. Like, let's see if that works, right? And that was actually something we latched onto and we've done for 7 years. So my initial expectations didn't take into account the community aspect of it, but also the networking aspect, right? If you're gonna go do security work for someone, there is this initial appliance of trust, right? You wanna have some kind of relationship. For us, that somewhat relationship was our podcast, right? They heard us talking every week, they feel like they got to know us, and that helped build relationships with the entire community. So you need to do the same thing. That's the other reason I encourage people to have Twitter, to write a blog, to write papers and volunteer in open source, right? Is you're building that trust with the community as well. And my initial expectations for that, it didn't pan out. So I learned that over time. So
it looks like we have one last question.
I remember reading recently some blog or other, I think it was the U.S., I'm going to say U.S. Department of Labor, I may be wrong about the agency, recently classified computer security as an occupation, not a profession. And I want to ask the panel if you agree or disagree with that assessment, and what should be, in your view, the correct answer, occupation or profession?
How do you distinguish those two terms as the same thing?
Well, that depends on what your definition of a profession is. An occupation is something that you do for a living that's not a profession. Okay, so that security is not professionalized is the implication of this.
How did you do security get a paycheck?
Yeah. Wait, I got to back up a second. Do they define IT in general that way?
No.
So IT is a profession or is an occupation?
I don't know, I just read that.
Yeah, it doesn't
I read the article, but...
I'd like to comment on that.
Okay,
that's interesting because, not to bore anyone in minutiae, but as part of the TRA in 1986, there was a 1706 amendment to that had to do with computer consulting. And what happened at the time was that, remember there was the big 8 and the big 6. They would have like $300 and $400 an hour consulting bill rates, and all these independents would come out there and be able to offer just as good services, but for half the price. So their lobbyists effectively got them to insert into the law that people couldn't be an independent consultant and thereby have, not have taxes withheld unless they met these 20 criteria of being an actual corporation. And so they defined anyone who did work independently in their execution of the job was based on their professional competence and not someone just being handed a list of road activities. It was a separation between someone who's just a worker and someone who was a professional. From my understanding from the computer industry perspective, they were considered professionals by the government using that criteria.
I'm actually familiar with that study, now that I recall, and that's more or less what it is. And the notion of this, again, came from Dan Gear, actually. It's been one of his themes over the last year or so.
I would say none of the above. It's a lifestyle.
I think we just close on that.
It's a lifestyle. Well said, Rick.
All right, so we're out of time, but stick around for closing remarks if you want to, enter to win stuff, all that fun stuff. And you can obviously hit them up before we get started if you want to.
Thanks, everyone.